Hello, my monstrosities. Hello once again. Today I bring to you what I think could be the solution to not only our problem, but a brand of problem. So we open up here with the Neurolictor. The humble Neurolictor. We know it. Some of us love it. Neural disruption in your command phase. Select one enemy unit within a foot of this model. That unit must take a Battleshock test. Psychological Saboteur. While an enemy unit is within a foot of this model, if that unit is battle shocked, each time a model in that unit makes an attack, subtract 1 from the hit roll. Also, each time a friendly Tyranid model makes an attack that targets that unit, add 1 to the wound roll. Alright, unassuming enough, we know what the Neurolictor does. We also have Death Leaper, Fear of the Unseen. While an enemy unit is within 6 inches of this model, worsen the leadership characteristic of models in that unit by 1. In addition, in the Battleshock step of your opponent's command phase, if such an enemy unit is below its starting strength, it must take a Battleshock test. Alright, we know what Death Leaper does. We also have a Neuro Tyrant. Note last, while this model is leading a unit, each time a model in that unit makes an attack, add 1 to the hit roll. If the target is Battleshocked, add 1 to the wound roll as well. Psychic Terror. If one or more models from your army with this ability are on the battlefield when you unleash the Shadow and the Warp, subtract 1 from the Battleshock test each enemy unit on the battlefield must take as a result. So, what if we took most of that shit and made it one detachment rule? Well, that's kind of where I know I wasn't the only one, jealousy kicks in when Chaos Space Marines got their redo for the Night Lords detachment, Nightmare Hunt. Terror Made Manifest. In the Battleshock step of your opponent's command phase, if an enemy unit that is below its starting strength is within a foot of one or more Heretic Astartes units from your army, that enemy unit must take a Battleshock test, subtracting 1 from the result. Enemy units affected by this detachment rule do not need to take any other Battleshock test in the same phase. Each time a Heretic Astartes model from your army makes an attack that targets a unit that is below half strength, add 1 to the hit roll. Each time an attack targets a Heretic Astartes unit from your army, if the attacking model is Battleshocked, subtract 1 from the hit roll. Each time a Heretic Astartes model from your army makes an attack that targets a Battleshock unit, add 1 to the wound roll. So, long have we craved, since GW decided to make us a Battleshock faction, an actual Battleshock detachment. Our closest being Vanguard Onslaught, where you have Surprise Assault, into which you can throw out some Battleshock test, and you have Hunting Grounds, into which, if somebody sets up for reserves, there's a good chance that they have to take a Battleshock test, as well as, well, Vanguard Invaders doing some Battleshock things. This also extends to the Moloch as well. And did I cover my ass on everybody? The Parasite of more tricks too. Sorry. So, Vanguard Invaders have some Battleshock shenanigans. We also have Synaptic Nexus, into which we have the Dirge Heart of Karis, 15 points, Tyranid Synapse model only, while an enemy unit is within 9 inches of the bearer, worsen that unit's leadership characteristic by 1, which only really plays a part in Battleshock test. And we also have the Smothering Shadow. Any phase just after an enemy unit fails a Battleshock test, one Synapse unit from your army within a foot of that enemy unit, roll 6d6 for each 3-up that enemy unit suffers 1 mortal wound. Which, um, both of those are fine. And the problem becomes that for us, or for a lot of people's opinion, with Battleshock, it doesn't do enough. There's been several pitches on how to fix this, where, oh, you don't automatically pass Battleshock in the next test, right? You don't, or in the next command phase, you don't automatically pass. You have to roll out of it, much like concentration. If any of you are familiar with D&D, concentrating on a spell, you get hit, You gotta make sure you concentrate, but until then, you're good, right? Um, that's one aspect of it. So adding a form of concentration to Battleshock would be a possible fix. But there is a line in Nightmare Hunt that made me wonder if we did get a Battleshock detachment, what the fuck would it even say? Because we already have Death Leaper and we have Neurolictors. So it would be quite repetitive to staple that as the detachment rule, as the way they have for Nightmare Hunt, as the way they did for shit. What was the old one even called? Uh, goodness, Dread Talons. There we go. As they did for Dread Talons, and how they did for old Chaos Knights. Right, Chaos Knights before the detachment, the army rule redo. That's kind of what it said. And we can't quite just go stealing the Chaos Demon shit bar for bar, into which, well, at base, they, within the Shadow of Chaos, do mortals. But we've also had something like Plague Legion where you go, well, fuck it. What if, you know, when people fail Battleshock, a model just straight up fucking dies? Yeah? What if we do more of that? And that's where I come to two things about if we, over here in Tyranids, did get a Battleshock detachment, what it would need to not feel like ass. Because, well, Nightmare Hunt, people aren't that high up on it, but there is one very important thing in there that I want to come back to. Chaos Knights had their reign of terror, and they're doing fine by the metrics I can see. They're doing okay after everything, but that wasn't necessarily because of their army rule. That was because they were costed very cheaply in comparison to what you get out the package. Um, and that's kind of where I want to go on here for Chaos Knights for a second. If anybody does bring up the qualm of, oh, Monster, you can't do that. We have Neurolictors, we have three of those things, and we have one Death Leaper, and we have other Battleshock things, like a Mawloc, you might get lucky. We have the Screamer Killer, Haruspex might get lucky. We can't do that. I would like to direct you to an entire faction that is several times larger than a Neurolictor, putting out that aura to much more spots of the board with much better data sheets. So we can hold that off. Like, just don't even do it. Okay? But, say all that to say, Chaos Knights can do that and, be cheap. And they fixed it. But then again, Plague Legion. So, if we were to have a Battleshock detachment, finally, a true Battleshock detachment for us over here in Tyranids, we would really enjoy Cankerblight esque thing. Not even gonna act like we wouldn't, but that's not the thing that keeps it afloat. Surprisingly enough, that makes it worth it sometimes. As Plague Legion did fine. Once everybody, once some of us rectified our initial opinions, Plague Legion did pretty good. Well, not good in the sense that it's taking out tournaments like that, but fine for what it is, right? But it still leaves you the problem of you are asking your opponent to be battle shocked. And I did see a funny comment on somebody else's video when I was looking at Nightmare Hunt opinions and things. If there was a thing to, just stick on to other people to say, like, oh, da 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 da, you'd have a Custodes player arguing that they wouldn't be scared. That shit was funny. But it does lead me to one line that Nightmare Hunt does have that saves a bit of face. Each time a Heretic Astartes model from your army makes an attack that targets a unit that is below half strength, add one to the hit roll. If we treated it, if we had a Battleshock detachment, air quotes, um, that instead of taking Death Leaper and Neurolictor bar for bar, said something along the lines of, in the command phase, your opponent that is within 6 inches, or hell, we might even be able to get quirky and get away with a foot like Nightmare Hunt did. Within a foot of one or more Tyranid units is treated as below half strength. And you'd go, monster, how the fuck will they let that fly? Well, first off, we have Nightmare Hunt that is perfectly fine. Um, but there's also one that I didn't pull up that is now coming to relevancy from, once again, a faction that I just talked quite fairly enough about, Necrons, into which they have something like Pantheon of Woe, where deep striking Catans, right? Like, deep striking Catans can make it so that when they're next to an enemy, the enemy is unraveling, and you get +1 AP into that target. And we've seen things like this before. We've seen Final Day out of GSC, which involves our own Buggy Boys. In Final Day, right, they have Catalyst. While an enemy unit is within 6 inches of this unit, each time a friendly GSC unit makes an attack that targets that enemy unit, add 1 to the hit roll. So, if we could just be around shit and inflict shit, it'd be fine. But why would I not want to just say, as a blanket, just give them +1 to hit within 6 inches the same way we did with Final Day? Well, here's the thing. If you treat that unit as being below half strength, they still have to take a Battleshock test. And if they take a Battleshock test, then they might be Battleshocked. And if you give us a line like this, right? A line like this, then I'll still take my +1 to hit. And if they're Battleshocked out of failing their Battleshock test, maybe Neurolictor tags along, maybe Death Leaper is in some other corner. Then you can get the +1 to wound situation going, but unfortunately that would require +1 to wound out of Neurolictor. Maybe. This is where I say the less creative part of it. Instead of making it bar for bar, right? We do need rerolls, true, and that's unfortunately where I'm going to kind of go. But I do believe you still take this +1 to hit below half strength, make it so that Tyranids, yada yada yada, with thrown around. We already said it, treated as below half strength. But instead of +1 to wound versus targets that are battle shocked, make it reroll wounds. It is mathematically the same as +1 to wound. If you all are unaware, for the newer people, pretty much, not all the time, but most of the time, it'll average out that if you reroll, it's the same as +1. So when you have the combination of +1 and reroll, that's when it starts to get a little bit of handy. So if we were to get a Battleshock detachment, I would hope it says something along the lines of unit around Tyranids are treated as below half strength. If you attack something below half strength, you get +1 to hit. And if they are battle shocked, you get reroll wounds. That way, it doesn't completely overlap with the things that we already have in Death Leaper and Neurolictor. Now, you would say Neuro Tyrant already has +1 and +1. I think that's fine. That's literally, you're probably taking maybe 1 unit of that. You can double on that if you want, but there. Now you might be wondering why I also have these 2 tabs back here of Blood Angels open. So I misremembered at first. I thought that Rage Cursed Onslaught was the fix. The fix of it was, oh, don't worry, your unit doesn't have to be battle shocked if it is below half strength. right? Below half strength, that's when you get the bonus. No, instead, in Rage Curse Onslaught, it's if your unit is battle shocked because uh, Death Company tends to battle shock themselves because that's their thing. I guess that's their thing. But looking at the thing that it improved upon, the Lost Brethren, this is what asks you to be below starting strength and below half strength. Which, funny enough, I just thought it was funny to add this here that for the proposed fix to a Battle Shock detachment, the thing to cover your ass would be the opposite of what happened in Lost Brethren. The reason they work against each other is because in Lost Brethren, you're asking your own unit to be below half strength, which is harder to happen, like they're on the edge of death's door, compared to them battle shocking themselves, which is what they do. So in Rage Curse Onslaught, if they're battle shocked, there you go, right? Like that's the fix. Meanwhile, over here in Nightmare Hunt, the fix to your opponent not being battle shocked is treating them below half strength. That way you still get something, right? If they're battle shocked, you skip a step. Then you get, +1 to hit, uh, +1 to wound, whatever. Right? You're fine. -1 to hit. Sorry, they take -1 to hit, and you get +1 to wound into them. But by adding the caveat of if they're below half strength, you get something, and if they're below starting, then you might as well treat them as being battle shocked, right? Um, so it's funny that that's kind of the inverse there. And in that, it seems that GW is learning you kind of need to marry those concepts together. It's not enough to just be below half because the only thing you risk being below half is being battle shocked. And if you're not battle shocked, oh well. And I know a lot of people feel strongly about detachments and abilities that only work on things that are on their way out the door, which, again, funny enough, we have something on that one too, which is where it went wrong with. Da, 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 once again, coming back to Necrons, for the original Annihilation Legion. It was asking you to do something if the target of the attack was below half strength. Didn't really give a fuck if they were battle shocked, right? They just wanted that person to be below half strength. So if you add in the caveat and the coverage of below half strength and something when they're battle shocked, it's a bit better. Now, this does leave out one important thing, right? There is one part, one massive part of when your army will do nothing, which is something that Nightmare Hunt still will face. If you go into an opponent that is full strength and not battle shocked, which is why I would argue you add the aura ish thing of Tyranid next to your model means that next to your unit means that your unit is treated as below half strength. That way, you have a way to still engage with technically full strength non battle shocked units. So, yeah, GW, please. It seems like a thing that we yearn for. That way, we can actually give a fuck about Shadow and the Warp. On top of that, give us an effect on that front. But most importantly, make sure that we have a way to still engage with, on paper, full strength units. Full strength non battle shock units. Because that's when a detachment feels okay. Not saying that we have to treat everything as being below half strength, but make it so sure I have to work a little bit. I throw a Hormigaunt unit there, throw some gene stealers there, and those units are treated as below half strength in the command phase, so they still have to take a Battleshock test, and we like when that happens. So yeah, that's my pitch, I guess, for how you would do a Battleshock detachment for us, for the Buggy Boys, uh, and Tyranids. And GW, I am. Oh, my email is. You can find it. It's open. Uh, just saying. I'll take a couple of dollars or not. Jokes aside, though, that's kind of what I would be hoping for if we did have that way of detachment. So, if you like the video, like it. Got a comment from me, comment. And until next time, peace out, my monstrosities.